Yeah, so here we go again. I have, as planned, been for a walk, so I'm a bit out of breath. Excuse me for that. I just come from that walk. That was just over an hour. When I say just, I mean less than a minute over an hour. Round trip around the central park of the city, also known as Tiergarten. Turns out my global average of walking was 5.43 kph roughly. That's quite quick for walking pace, I guess. Then again, for motor vehicles, walking pace is minimum 7 kph. The most restrictive definition is 7 kph. I met up with the composer who did 20.24, formerly known as Working Title Smoke and Mirrors, earlier today to get a license agreement. They preferred signing it in paper, so proper handoff was done. And it was an excuse to leave the house. Though, ironically, today I didn't have a problem getting up, as I got up at roughly 5 in the AM. Because I guess I'd slept enough. I was asleep by 2100 yesterday night. Cracking open that ginger beer. That's my treat for having been for a walk, I guess. I only had one cigarette in that entire walk, so that's a challenge, I guess. Spend an hour outside with only one cigarette. So I got the license handed off. For the longest time, as until earlier today, the plan had been to have a half shooting day tomorrow for my elective course. Apparently that's not happening because, surprise, the service provider providing the location we were going to shoot at did not do their job of hand over the keys in a timely fashion, so that's been cancelled. Which somewhat is a bummer to me because I was looking forward to actually shooting a bit. I'm DOP for this one, so meh. A lot of people really like that role. I don't care too much, I guess. Funny way of putting it, but that's how it is. Just catching my breath. Crazy thing is, you can see the negative fill when dark cars drive by. It's impressive. Yeah, so that's kind of a bummer that I'm going to be missing that. On the other hand, the good news is I'll have plenty of time to look for adequate parking and still be one of the earliest to show up for the party I'm invited at. The invitation is from 1500 on, and I did confirm with the host that 3 PM is the earliest extreme. Which means I'll aim to be there in the area around 3 PM. And then start looking for parking. Which means I'm not actually going to show up at 3 PM. I'll at earliest show up like 5 minutes after. I still suspect I'm going to be one of the youngest people, if not the youngest person at all, in the room. But I'm still looking forward to it. I mean, hell, I tend to not get along with people younger than me or my age all that much, but that might just be a question of hardship. Because I've gotten along with some people in the past who've had hardship. I guess that's something that makes people mature. Something that matures people. Whew. I did not go by my former place of internship. I wasn't even confident enough they were open to justify the extra 15 minutes journey one way from where I am now, not from where I was before. I'll manage, you know. Only problem is leaving now. I'm going to catch rush hour, Ooh, that's a lot of negative, Phil. Just talking about rush hour, there we go, that's the beginning of it now, not quite, but we now got 24 past 3 in the PM. That's when traffic starts to pick up. I'm not too fussed about tomorrow because tomorrow is weekend, so I'm going to be able to find adequate parking without too much concern. Fairly confident in that. Yeah, it's funny with going for a walk, back to the original tangent, I guess. Let's put one foot in front of the other, and the challenge is to do it as quickly as you can manage. I don't do it for sport's sake, but I guess it is exercise after all. I do tell my Apple Watch it's exercise, so I can keep track of my speeds. Admittedly, it shows time per kilometre, not kilometres per time, but one can just keep track of time and or do the reverse calculation of divide by 1. Divide 1 by. There we go. To get kph instead of HPK. Man, that was knackering. Good news is, on the other hand, from yesterday to today I slept pretty well. I was in bed just after 8:30 PM, and I do not recall being awake at 9 in the PM. And I slept solid sleep, or subjectively, it felt like good sleep, till 3 in the AM, which is when I started waking up. According to my data, tracked by my watch, I had quite the horrendous sleep, but I am actually thinking I've had good sleep, and I'd rather just believe what I believe. Not worry about the measurable metrics, because they are flawed. It's not a health device. And I mean, I could consider wiring myself up proper every night for an EKG, but first off, currently I do not have the liquidity, and second off, I don't think I'd be able to justify the expense ever. So, nah. The only way I'm doing that is if health insurance pay for it. Yeah, I've just about caught my breath back. That's nice. And I hadn't actually planned on it being an hour's trip. It's just what it ended up as. With the round trip I ended up walking. And it was like an hour on the minute. Well, I was here like 20 seconds after an hour. Nice. I am still concerned for that uni poetry film project. I'll most certainly only end up uploading it unlisted on YouTube. Maybe I'll list it, but odds are I won't. We'll see. I mean, you'll see. And I don't quite know when I'm filming that. Earlier on my walk, I did see some nice water seas, plural of vortex. There we go. Of fluff, which is like seed matter from some kind of tree. Don't ask me which one. I guess it's willows, actually. Never mind. I saw fluff though, and that was in those water seas, and I thought, oh, that's quite good. But I ended up not filming it because I was busy walking. Can't walk and film at the same time, you know. Funny how that works. Earlier today, on my way into town, so that would have been just afternoon. After space noon. There we go. I actually saw a Husqvarna 701 Vitpillen motorcycle, and I'm pretty sure most people wouldn't recognise that, but there isn't that many Husqvarna motorcycles that are actually road legal. And I'm surprised to see one in the city, just because I didn't think there was all that many in existence. They aren't expensive because they're rare, they're just expensive because they're Scandinavian. I believe they're Scandinavian, if I'm not mistaken. Huh. I'm sure someone will correct me. This is the interwebs. best way to find out something. State a wrong fact and be corrected. But, I mean, they cost an arm and a leg. But considering how many there is on sale within this country, which is like a handful of each of the models, I'm surprised to have seen one today. And I recognised it. Yeah, that's probably me just being a bloody nerd though. Husqvarna 701 Vitpillen. One of their 3 or 4 road legal models, I believe. That is not an enduro, because they do have a lot of enduros, some of which have lights and are therefore road legal. Most of their bikes are just dirt bikes. Well, or chainsaws. Then again, Chainsaw Steel is also a good name, so. And that's the odd thing. I have never owned a motorised chainsaw, only ever an electric one. And yet, I know that Husqvarna and Stihl are good names for chainsaws. As in, if I were to buy one, and I had the capital and the need to actually use one, I'd get one of them. Which is a funny thing, because that's good reputation going ahead of people actually knowing your brand. Which is probably quite valuable. That just makes those names valuable. Then again, to my understanding, they haven't actually outsourced to foreign lands for the sake of ease, with less quality control, which is the issue. I mean, no matter where you produce, the moment you don't got quality control, you got BS product, you know. Yeah, I'm actually really rather knackered. I had one odd encounter with a cyclist in the park, because in these parks pedestrians have the right of way. I actually show when I intend to turn, so I had my hand sticking out left, just because I ain't got eyes in the back of my head. I was walking on the left, and then a cyclist rang his bell and squeezed past my left, even though there was 2 cyclists worth of path on my right. Guess if you don't understand logic, then again, who'd expect a pedestrian to show hand signs for where they're going? Not many pedestrians do. I can tell you that much. I like this ginger beer. I'm not paid to endorse it. I just like it. It's good stuff. The old Jamaican ginger beer. I don't think one can usually buy it in Germany. Then again, the place had Iron Brew last week, and it had this week, so it's like double the price of UK market. Then again, it have to be imported and it have to be labelled for this country, which presumably mean they need to legally translate the ingredients list with a certified translator or something. And all that probably add up, assuming they don't do huge quantities. Evidently they do not, otherwise they would not have to stick labels on, they'd have separate cans. Funny how that work. Oh nice, a moped on the cyclist path. That was not legal. Then again, I believe it was less than a horsepower moped. One of them French ones. Bicycle with motor, but it did have a moped reg. So probably is not legal. There is Elektrokleinstfahrzeuge, minor electric vehicles, which can be legally insured the same way mopeds are, and they are allowed on the cyclist path, but I suspect the moment it have a combustion engine, it's not allowed on bicycle paths. Just a ballpark guess, admittedly. I've been looking more and more into what it'd take to get a license of type B196. So to allow me to ride 125 cubic bikes with up to 11 kilowatts of horsepower. Of horsepower, yeah, of power, there we go. or 15 horsepower of power. And looking like the license itself, but only in quotation marks because it's a lot of money. But that's cost like $700. Problem I see is I'm not going to be comfortable and it's going to be painful. I started introducing the language, so I might as well use it. For me to do driving school racing leathers, and I highly suspect in driving school for insurance purposes you have to wear racing leathers. So I'd also have to get myself a kit of those, which would cost another $700. For ones I could at least use for a few years, you know. Does that make it like $1,400-1,500 undertaking? On-taking, I guess. Not undertaking. But $1,400-1,500 is rather steep. I'd be surprised if I could manage that before I got a job. And even once I got a job, I mean, obviously I'm going to have expenses and so on. But it should be reasonable to put some money aside and not just blow it all. First off, rainy days, as is currently. I mean, currently I have no dosh coming in. And I got a month's rent remaining and a month's expenses. And then I'll be in the red. Not just in debt red, but red. Bank account red. Indebted to the bank. Which I don't want to be. And I guess that's another thing I ought to do once I got an income. Put some stuff aside. Some for mid-term, some for long-term. Just because, I did look at, for example, well, I guess that's one thing with being rather broke. Missing liquidity for the sake of being nice, I guess. I did start window shopping for a lot of things. For example, I did window shop a flat just over there. You can get it for as little as like 280 grand, 300 grand if you include the credit, the interest. I'm saying as little because I was surprised by how cheap that is. Then again, it's a 35 square meter flat with a balcony and 1 room and 2 hallways, kitchen, bathroom. Long term, I don't think that kind of space would suffice for me, and admittedly it's only window shopping, so I don't see myself being in the position to buy that kind of flat. And even if I were, I don't know if I'd be happy with that long term. I'd probably want 2 rooms. With 2 rooms I could well imagine moving in a place like that, but I'm still not going to have the liquidity to acquire a place like that, even on credit. And I mean, equivalent 2-room flats in this area costs couple hundred grand more, up to, so 400 to 500 grand, $500,000. And I highly suspect by the time I have the capital for a down payment of that kind, the price would probably be more than $1 million. Which is probably too big a commitment for me to want to buy a place here ever. Just because long term I don't see myself in city life. But that might still change, you never know. I guess good news for people like me who are bound to motor vehicles. Could change in the long term as well, who knows. The city's infrastructure ain't going away from motor vehicles anytime soon. Too much of the economy depend on motor vehicles. And too many people. I mean, that'd be quite funny, the President or the Chancellor riding around in public transport. Can't imagine that. Probably have happened in the past, who knows? I don't care enough for them to know, so meh. Where we are here, the speed limit just went from 30 to 50, and it's surprising how many cars are managing to do more than 50 just after the speed limit was raised. Then again, when I drive there, I get overtaken even though it's a solid line, so you aren't allowed to change lanes consistently, just because I obey the speed limit. One I think is not that hard, but you know, how hard could it be? That's what she said in that that's a Top Gear reference for you. But so many people aren't managing. It's just nuts. Like, you'd think people would grow up and get to learn shit like that. You've got to start the engine because the battery's running a bit low. I consider it part of growing up, that you plan adequately to not have to worry about hurrying. I mean, the speed limit is supposed to be the maximum speed limit, which means you aren't supposed to go over it. You should not be able to go over it. Then again, we all know how to go if cars were to automatically not let you go over it, which is a car C 30 speed limit, which is like from 10 PM to 6 in the AM at midday, and it's to say, oh, you're only allowed 30, you'd only be driving 30. So at this time, there is no way of resolving that automizing that. With my plants, I actually only watered them yesterday morning. I did not water them yesterday night. Subject change in case you hadn't noticed. And by this morning they were really nice and dry. The bog roll cartridge holders, tubes I have them planted in, were dry on the outside, which means I did actually water them a bit this morning, but I reckon that's probably good for them if they don't sit in a swamp permanently. So I may not water them again today, or if so, then I'll keep it limited. Just because, why not, you know? This morning I did get to play some video games, and I actually managed to have some fun while doing so, which is an odd occurrence for me. I don't know. That is the playing video games, not the having fun while doing so. But I didn't have to stress about, oh, I got to go somewhere, just because, hell, if you get up at 5 AM and your earliest commitment is just after 1 in the PM, you've got a lot of time on your hands. Damn, you know. I've also discovered a new dashcam channel. I frequently enjoy a lot of dashcam channels, particularly German ones on the YouTubes. German ones because I can relate to them, because I am on the same roads those videos are taken on. And I found a new one, and I actually quite like it. It's a very chill atmosphere, which not all others always provide. They all provide their own value, I guess. But that leaves me a backlog of 3 or 4 hours remaining to watch through. So that's what I reckon I'll do when I get home. Not be productive, but just enjoy time passing and wait for it to be late enough that I can reasonably go to bed and get up tomorrow. Not get up like tonight. An Audi R8 V10, I believe it was, just drove by. Sounds amazing, but he was still accelerating and he was over 70 kph. Like, come on people, grow up. You're allowed to have fun in your vehicles, but do it within the limits of the law. And if you don't want to obey the laws, hell, go to the racetrack. Nürburgring ain't that far away. You can get there in less than a tank of petrol. Admittedly, the racetrack has, in some ways, more regulations than the road, but at least the speed is not one of them, I guess. And it's all the idea of safety. I mean, why not, you know? Racetrack's little purpose is people having fun going fast. So if you want to have fun going fast, go there. Or go on roads where the motor vehicle you have cannot legally go above the speed limit for elongated periods of time. Which means don't drive an Audi R8 V10. I believe it was V10, no guarantees. Could have been a V8 or V12. Who knows? But that's one thing. For example, this car, it's only got 73 kilowatts power. All my previous cars, they're kind of under-motorized for woods driving up and down hill. Which means particularly uphill, you'll never get to the speed limit. And that's even though you can do technical driving. So chronically accelerating, decelerating, and all steering. And that's like having fun, you know. And you can do that within the limits of the law if you have a low power car. I believe with motorcycle it might be hard to do it within the limits of the law, just because they accelerate so much easier, because they weigh so much less. Then again, that's another thing. On the roads, the speed limits are made for the worst vehicles the road could be for. I mean, yes, in this country, on country roads, lorries are only allowed up to 60 kph. That is lorries above 3.5 metric tons of weight limit. So what I'm driving is what the road speed limits are made for. And the moment you're in something sportier, or you're on a motorbike or something, speed limits are not quite sensible. And I understand that, but they are still limits, man. Like, it's not that hard. How hard could it be? I am at times with these sessions actually having a hard time coming out with titles these days. Which I guess is the title. And we have a thumbnail, there we go. Yeah, I'm having a hard time coming up with titles for these. I'm going to have to hand in 20.24, formerly known as Working Titles Smoke and Mirrors, with the first festival by Wednesday next week. That's the deadline for, I believe, the Paris Creative and Experimental Don't Ask Me festival. They don't charge submission fees, so there's no expense of handing it in. So I may as well, you know. Looking forward to have that behind me, the handing in bit, that is. Yeah, anyways, I think I'm going to go enjoy myself for the rest of the day. Just hang around and wait for time to pass. Not in an unpleasant way, I guess. I hope you can do that too. Stay safe. Cheerio.